forgotten suitcase, a missing son, and a husband who vanished without a trace. Piece by piece, the truth unraveled, revealing a crime born from betrayal, vengeance, and blood. Stay with us to uncover the full story of this chilling case. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because every Friday at 7 p.m. US time, a new crime story awaits you. In one night of 1985, an elderly woman, well over 80, walked into the Giza police station. Her face was worn with grief, her body frail, and her eyes searching desperately for a glimmer of hope. She sat before an investigator and, gathering the last of her strength, told him what haunted her. Her only son, Wagdi, had vanished. Wagdi was no young man. He was 63 years old, a mathematics teacher working in one of the Gulf countries. He had returned to Egypt just a few days earlier, or at least that was what his mother claimed. A strange, unsettling feeling inside her whispered that something terrible had happened to him. At first, the officer, skeptical yet gentle, tried to calm her down. He suggested the matter might be trivial. Perhaps Wagdi had been delayed at work, or his trip postponed, or maybe he had been visiting relatives. But the mother's words carried an uncanny certainty. "My son came back to Egypt. He called me twice. Once before boarding the plane, and once again when he landed at Cairo airport. He told me he was tired, going home to rest, and the next day he would come to have breakfast with me." Days passed. Wagdi never came, never called, never appeared. When his mother went to his house to look for him, his wife Nadia calmly told her that Wagdi had never returned from abroad at all. Her tone was steady, but to the old woman, it was laced with lies. Her mother's instinct screamed louder than ever. There was a dark secret behind Wagdi's disappearance. The old woman returned to the station again and again, waiting each day for news of her missing son. The officers sympathized, but Nadia tried to convince them that her mother-in-law was imagining things. She insisted that age and senility had blurred her mind, even hinting that personal conflicts between them made her testimony unreliable. And yet, the officer could not ignore the look in the mother's eyes. It was raw, desperate, the look of someone clinging to truth before it slipped away. Something inside him urged him to believe her, and so he decided to follow the lead. The investigation began at the airport. Records of arriving passengers were checked, and there it was, the shock. Wagdi's name appeared clearly among those who had landed from the Gulf on the exact date his mother had mentioned. So, the man had indeed returned to Egypt, and Nadia had lied. But if Wagdi came back, where was he now? Why hadn't he called his mother or visited her as he promised? As the officers scrambled for answers, a strange report surfaced, tilting the entire case. A taxi driver arrived at a nearby station, carrying an unusual story. He said he had picked up an entire family from the airport and driven them to the district of Ober. Among them was a man who seemed to be returning from a long trip. But after dropping them off, the driver discovered that this man had left behind something extremely important in the car. The driver had tried to return it, but he never managed to find him. At that moment, the investigators realized they were standing at the edge of a labyrinth. A mother clinging to her intuition, a wife denying her husband's return, and a taxi driver holding a clue that could unlock the mystery. From then on, the case would descend into shadows and secrets. At that very moment, a sudden interruption changed the course of the interrogation. A security officer entered to announce that the taxi driver connected to the case had just arrived. The man was Abdel Kader, a seasoned driver known for his honesty and calm demeanor. Seated before investigators, he revealed that only a few days earlier he had picked up a family from Cairo airport and taken them to their home in Ober. One of them, a man who seemed to have just returned from abroad, had forgotten a suitcase in the car. Inside were official documents, a large sum of Gulf currency, and a passport with the name Vagdi. Abdelkader explained how he had tried to return the suitcase. When he found no trace of the family at the address, he even approached a newspaper to publish the story. But when they refused, he went directly to the police. His testimony confirmed one thing: Vagdi had indeed returned to Egypt. Investigators immediately separated Abdelkader from Nadia so as not to alert her. But when he was eventually brought face to face with her at the station, she froze instantly, recognizing him as the man who had driven her and Vagdi from the airport. In that moment, her carefully built lies collapsed. The officers turned to her daughter, Sama. Shaken and pale, she at first tried to remain silent, but under pressure, her defenses crumbled. In a trembling voice, she revealed the hidden truth of their home. Her mother had been involved for years with a man named Ahmed Farghali. To hide the affair, Nadia routinely laced her children's tea with sedatives, sending them into deep sleep while she spent the nights with her lover. But Sama's brother, had grown suspicious. One night, he refused to drink the tea and pretended to sleep. Near midnight, he quietly rose and witnessed the unthinkable: his mother in the arms of Ahmed Farghali. Unable to contain his rage, Sameh attacked the man. But Ahmed, stronger and more brutal, fought back. In front of Nadia's eyes, he wrapped his hands around the boy's throat and strangled him mercilessly, silencing him forever. On a night darker than any nightmare, young Sama refused the cup of tea her mother had laced with sedatives. Wide-eyed, she stayed awake, and what she saw shattered her world forever. Her brother, Sameh, strangled to death by Ahmed Farghali, while her own mother Nadia stood watching. And with a chilling threat, Nadia whispered, "If you dare speak, your fate will be the same." Days later, their father Wagdi returned from abroad. At the airport, he was met by Nadia, his daughter, and Ahmed, disguised as a taxi driver. When he asked about his missing son, the cold reply was, he left for Iraq to work. But the truth waited for him at home. During Ramadan, after the evening meal, Nadia handed him his usual tea. This time, it was poisoned. Helpless and unconscious, Wagdi lay still, as Nadia and her lover slit his throat, severed his head, and buried it in the desert beside his son. The rest of his body was hacked to pieces, dismembered in silence. Sama, trembling in horror, could only watch. Her mother's words echoed, "Now you are one of us. Silence is your only survival." But silence did not last forever. The crimes unraveled, and Nadia's secret past spilled into the light. She confessed without hesitation. She spoke of herself as a 15-year-old schoolgirl in the 1960s, preyed upon by her teacher, Wagdi. When she fell pregnant, her family forced her into marriage with her rapist. Her first child was taken from her arms and murdered to protect the family's honor. From that wound, Nadia grew bitter, hollow, and consumed by vengeance. She carried that darkness for decades, until it exploded into a nightmare of blood, betrayal, and death. Nadia lived with Wagdi abroad for years in calm stability, but stability was never enough for a woman like her. With time, a growing restlessness consumed her. She was neither happy nor content. Each day her beauty grew more radiant, while age carved deep lines into her husband's face. He was 20 years her senior. The gap between them became the subject of glances and whispers. Nadia could not shake the feeling that her youth was slipping away, her life wasted for nothing. She decided to insist on returning to Egypt under the pretext of giving the children a proper education. For 3 years, Wagdi resisted, but eventually, he yielded to her relentless pressure. Nadia returned with her 2 children, Sama and Sameh, and in Egypt she breathed a different air. She felt her youth revive within her, as if anything were now possible. One day, she hailed a taxi. The driver, a man named Ahmed Farghali, watched her with eyes she could not ignore. She noticed his admiration and secretly enjoyed it. She smiled when he boldly confessed that he didn't know her, but couldn't take his eyes off her beauty. His words stirred something inside her, a victorious thrill. From that moment, the story began. They exchanged phone numbers, and the nightly calls followed. Whispered words, promises, and desires carried them through till dawn. Yet meeting in secret wasn't easy. The presence of her children in the house was an obstacle. That was when Nadia devised a wicked plan. She convinced Wagdi to buy a taxi and let Ahmed drive it. This way, Ahmed could enter the house freely under the pretense of daily accounting. At night, Nadia would slip sleeping pills into her children's food and drink, ensuring they slept deeply while she surrendered to stolen hours with her lover. It didn't take long for the neighbors to notice. The long visits, the late-night gatherings, the whispers no one could silence. Still, nothing stopped her. Even when she confronted Wagdi with demands for divorce, he refused. So she struck him with a harsher truth. She was with another man, unashamed and unrepentant. What shocked her was his cold reply. "Do as you wish. Just stay with me for the children." That answer didn't just kill her love, it crushed her respect for him. From then on, betrayal became not only her escape, but her revenge. Her affair with Ahmed was no longer hidden. She stopped caring about gossip or eyes that watched, until the day her eldest son, Sameh, uncovered the truth. He saw what should never be seen. For Nadia, there was only one way to silence him forever. Sameh died, strangled, his life traded to protect her secret and her lover's survival. But fate had yet another turn. When Wagdi returned unexpectedly from abroad, Nadia laid out her final plan. No one would know he had come back. She would end his life in silence. She told everyone he had never reached the house. What she didn't anticipate was that Wagdi had left his small bag behind in the taxi, containing his papers and passport. That single forgotten detail exposed everything. The tale ended in blood. Nadia murdered her husband, murdered her son, and dragged her daughter into ruin. She was sentenced to death, and so was her lover Ahmed. As for Sama, whose life had barely begun, she was condemned to 10 years in prison for concealing and participating in the crimes. This was no ordinary case of murder. It was a tragedy rooted in the past. Nadia's childhood had been stolen. She was exploited, forced into marriage, and stripped of her first child. She grew up with wounds that never healed. And when the chance came, she repaid pain with blood, losing herself down a dark path from which there was no return.